June 26 was yet another busy day for thunderstorms. However, many of them occurred further away from home compared to previous days we've covered. Despite this, we still managed to see some lightning and experienced our fourth consecutive day of thunderstorms and high heat. Though, just because we didn't see many storms nearby did not mean it was not an active weather day in our area. Far from it. Just many of the big storms occurred in different locations compared to previous days. Let's see what happened. The overall synoptic setup was pretty similar to the day prior. According to the morning area forecast discussion from the National Weather Service, light southerly flow would allow both sea breezes to push inland. Once again, temperatures would reach heat advisory criteria, but thankfully for the last time this week. At home, our peak heat index reached 127 degrees. This definitely seems like a slightly more reasonable reading than the one we saw on the previous day. Once again, strong daytime heating would combine with a moisture-rich atmosphere to create another hotbed for summertime thunderstorms. Surface-based CAPE would reach an excess of 5,000 joules per kilogram during peak heating hours, along with mixed layer CAPE remaining around the 2 to 3,000 range for much of the day. Precipitable water values also remained high across much of Florida, ranging from 2.0 to 2.2 in our local area. Strong heating would remain into the evening hours, shown by the 7 p.m. points table. When it came to the timing of storms for the day, they would begin relatively early, first off of the Gulf Coast sea breeze. As the afternoon hours began, it was clear that the Gulf Coast sea breeze would be the more dominant one for the day. Many scattered showers with isolated thunderstorms were already beginning to work their way from our western counties, such as Union, Bradford, and Alachua. Thunderstorms would quickly become strong by 2:40 p.m. when this special weather statement was issued on a storm over Green Cove Springs. We were already on its tail fresh after work, and this storm is where we got a bulk of our footage for the day. Since our storm chase for the day started pretty early compared to when the most interesting weather occurred, for this video we're going to go over the footage first. Then after that, we'll take a look at some interesting thunderstorms that occurred around the first coast, but we weren't there to see in person. As previously mentioned, we already had our eyes on a thunderstorm that was approaching the St. Johns River. We arrived at our destination around 3 p.m., and a few minutes later, another special weather statement was issued, and a particularly long one at that. The road we were on was pretty good for viewing lightning, as the most intense part of the storm was now located directly to our east. Alright, it is June 26, 2024, and you just saw a bit ago we had the camera following the storm that we're moving towards, and I was under the impression that it was mostly just rain, because when I checked the radar before going out for a drive, it was mostly just rain. But as it starts to approach the St. Johns River, it is intensifying pretty quickly, as you can see, and there's a lot of lightning coming from it. We can hear the thunder, even though the storm's like probably a good 10 miles away now, like the core of it itself. So I'm not going to go chasing this storm because I've had enough of being inside the storms after the past 2 days. The idea is just to sit on the outskirts and try and see if we can get lucky with some lightning. And that's about it. There might be more thunderstorms later, like how there have been the past 2 nights. I'm not really sure. We're just going to have to wait and see. Nice. You saw that?
Yeah,
Perfect.
should be on camera.
I think it was. Shortly after getting the camera set up, the lightning began. We were able to see multiple cloud-to-ground strikes happening at a fairly frequent rate. However, we soon began to encounter our main trouble for the day when it came to photographing lightning, and that was the strange movement of the thunderstorms. I'll explain more about that when we get to the radar analysis portion of the video. What was over there? That's kind of concerning, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go grab the phone.
Yeah. And damn it. There's a bolt over there off camera and it lasted a solid second. Like that bolt lasted a solid second.
Hear it. Okay, that's multiple strikes are happening to our left, which is to here. Listen.
Multiple strikes keep it happening like way outside of the actual storm.
Yeah.
Way outside of it.
That was over by like that tree line over there. It wasn't even in like where the rain is. There's another one. You saw that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, I guess let's point over there for now. The other side's not helping us.
It didn't show up on camera here. But
That could just be the preview. Oh.
another bolt over here.
It's playing games with us today.
It is. Well, at least y'all are hearing it. We ain't lying.
Okay, so the northern portion of the storm now that we're looking at now has its own special weather station. So there probably is something developing on the northern side too. I saw it flashing. After a few more minutes of the storm being camera shy, we finally managed to get some lightning bolts within frame. Yeah! I think we got that one though. Whether it was one or two, I'm pretty sure we got that one.
We really are.
Yep. Exactly how I like it. Find it. Away.
Another 1 second strike.
Nice. Was it in frame?
Yeah, that one was.
As we continued to watch the storm, the wind began to pick up. This was likely outflow from the backside of the thunderstorm's rain shaft. This is a common and very welcome phenomenon from summertime thunderstorms, as it can provide a brief window of cooling from the boiling heat. While I have no way to confirm the temperature while we were out on the field, at home the temperature dropped around 3 degrees, despite not seeing any rain from the storm at all. We're getting good output from this. 18, 20 mile per hour gusts.
It's good.
It does. It actually feels pretty good now that the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
It really doesn't feel that bad.
No, not at all.
Over the next few minutes, we were able to see a few more cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. However, it seemed as if the storm to our east was beginning to weaken. Towards the end of the recording, we began to piece together that the storms were developing further to our north, away from where we could see them. Though I didn't really understand the extent of just how fast they were building away from us until going back over the radar scans from this day for this video.
You can still hear it. You see it's developed over here.
It has. Yeah, you're right. The rain shaft has.
Well,
I'm good. The rain shaft has definitely picked up the pace.
yeah.
I see that now.
I mean,
Woo! Shit! Did you see that?
I did. I hope that was right on the edge.
Wow!
Yeah.
I saw that. That was two.
That's crazy. It's developing further.
It has. Yeah, no, see, they say that, cloud to ground lightning is usually a good indicator of where storm strength. I saw a bolt like out of frame all the way to it's building this way, is what we're seeing. Or like just generally to the north, when first on it was to the south.
It's crazy. You can see the way the wind bends the rain.
I know. That entire line now, like there's a line of storms, and it's crossing over the St. John's River, so it's probably intensifying further. It has a special weather station from like Palm Coast all the way to Orange Park. Yeah. There were multiple areas of interest regarding thunderstorms on the first coast on June 26th, but to get started, we'll look at the thunderstorm complex that formed to our east near the St. John's River. To understand these thunderstorms, we have to go back to around 1:30 p.m. as scattered showers and storms were beginning to approach Clay County. They were all moving and developing along a very thin line on the leading edge of the storms, which is the Gulf Coast Seabreeze. The showers attempted to intensify into thunderstorms along this boundary. Some of them lived and some of them collapsed. But after about an hour of this cycle, a line began to take shape towards 2:30 p.m. The dominant cell out of this cluster of garden variety showers was able to develop into a thunderstorm to the southwest of Green Cove Springs. This was the first storm of the day in our part of Florida to receive a special weather statement. Over the course of around 20 minutes, the line began to look stronger and more solid. However, by 3 p.m., the southern chunk of the line began to weaken and break off. This would not be for nothing, though, as another big storm cell developed near it around Hastings and Palaca. The northern chunk of the line, which was the part that we were observing, quickly began to weaken towards 3:30 p.m. Something strange begins to happen, though, as the storm approaches the Atlantic sea breeze. The Gulf Coast sea breeze and storm outflow that was riding along the front end of these storms smacked into the Atlantic sea breeze, which caused a rapid shift in direction of storm development. Throughout the day, the storms were generally drifting from southwest to northeast, but with its boundary collisions, the storms began to build sharply due north. These storms must have been in a real hurry to clear out because by 3:30 the portion in front of us had lost much of its luster. In fact, the new storm cells had already developed far to our north along the Clay-Duval County borders. These new storms would continue to accelerate northward, already making it to downtown Jacksonville and the beaches by 4 p.m. These storms would continue to fly along the Seabreeze merger, making it up to the Florida-Georgia border in Nassau County by 5 p.m. Mind you, many of these storms that were developing along this boundary were weak and fairly short-lived, not having a lot of time to really develop. However, this cannot be said for the storms that were going on in southeastern Georgia. Thunderstorms began a bit later in the day for southeastern Georgia than they did for us, however, they ended up being much more intense. Taking a look at the 4 p.m. radar, we can notice a few distinct clusters of thunderstorms. The aforementioned cluster that was shooting to the north through Florida, a cluster of storms along a line from Nahunta to Brunswick in Georgia, and an extremely tall line of intense thunderstorms over the extreme northwestern portions of our viewing area and up into southern Georgia. Believe it or not, all three of these features would come together to help develop a massive complex of thunderstorms. Moving the radar forward to 4:45, two distinct clusters of thunderstorms have taken shape near the Florida-Georgia border. Within the next 30 minutes, these two storm systems would merge, creating a large field of heavy rain, strong wind gusts, and a ridiculous amount of cloud-to-ground lightning. A severe thunderstorm warning was issued for this complex at 5:01 p.m. These were some truly massive thunderstorms, with cloud tops reaching over 57,000 feet into the atmosphere. This complex of storms would continue to rain hell for another half hour, before that third cluster of thunderstorms from earlier finally made its way towards the east coast, albeit in a weaker state. As this cluster began to weaken slightly, a strong outflow boundary was shot out in front of it. This not only helped intensify the main thunderstorm complex, but it also helped build new showers in between the two, helping another storm merger happen quicker. The main complex of thunderstorms would receive a second severe thunderstorm warning as a result of this strengthening. A full-on merger would take place around 5:40 p.m., with the new complex looking incredibly formidable. A few minutes prior, a flood advisory was issued for Nassau and Camden counties in Florida and Georgia respectively. Surprisingly, the complex would not last very long, as by 6:15 p.m. much of the heavy rain had dissipated over the Florida-Georgia border. What was left of the thunderstorm complex continued to move north up towards Brunswick, prompting another flood advisory. Focusing back closer to home, a few more storms would try to get started throughout the evening, but not to much avail. Despite atmospheric conditions remaining relatively favorable for storms by 7 p.m., not much of note would develop. Around 6:30 p.m., you can see an outflow boundary from the Georgia storm complex beginning to move back into northeastern Florida. A rain shower forms ahead of this boundary and does actually manage to become quite the punchy thunderstorm. The outflow boundary hits the storm cell at about 7:04, where you can see it looks pretty dense on radar. At the same time, the final special weather statement for the day was issued and given to the storm for the threat of 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Towards 7:30 p.m., a cluster of showers tried to develop over southern Clay County, but aside from a few brief lightning strikes and rumbles of thunder, nothing notable seemed to come from these storms. I will admit that they were fairly persistent, as single-cell showers continued to pop up around the county until almost 10 p.m. However, none of them were able to get their acts together and develop into thunderstorms. June 26 was yet another active day of thunderstorms for the First Coast. A total of 22 special weather statements were issued by NWS Jacksonville, which is more than the previous day, surprisingly. We also had 4 flood advisories and 4 severe thunderstorm warnings issued, despite no severe weather being forecast. The other 2 severe thunderstorms were associated with that tall line of storms I mentioned earlier over to our northwest portions of our viewing area. A few reports of wind damage would come from the severe thunderstorms, but thankfully nothing major. The main form of damage was downed tree branches, likely due to downburst winds. Thank you for joining us for another episode of First Coast Storm Tracking. We still have more interesting weather to go over, as this week continued to give us thunderstorms. However, that's for another video. We hope you enjoyed this video, though, as much as we enjoyed making it. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe, as it lets us know that you enjoy what we do. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.